Today, I have a very good friend of mine on the podcast today, Eric Freedom Reason Chang. He owns CrossFit Reason in Arcadia, California. He has been a gym owner for 10 years. He started in a garage, and we both have very similar stories. We also went to college together at Biola University, and that's where we both found CrossFit through, you found it through a mutual friend.
Yeah.
And then we've been friends ever since, kind of off and on, but more recently been hanging out a lot more.
Yes, sir.
Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll.
That's cool. That's
When
good.
you said
That's
welcome
good.
to the show, made me think of Goob. You ever follow Goob?
Dude, that's where I got welcome to the show from.
He goes, welcome to the show.
I love Goob. If you're not following Goob, is it Goob to you on
Goob
Instagram?
something.
Follow him
He's
on
brilliant.
Instagram. He's excellent. All right, so let's get right into things. Eric, share with us what event has had the most profound impact on shaping the person you are today.
That's going straight for the basement.
Dude, we go straight for it.
That's
dude.
straight for the basement.
We don't
dude.
waste any time.
Yeah. I think there's two things that come to mind when I think about, and they're both like fitness related and not fitness related in a way, I guess. First one would probably be like my faith. So like when I became a Christian, that's probably the most profound thing that's happened in my life. And I would say secondly would be meeting my wife. Yeah, would be the second most profound or thing that's ever happened in my life. Yeah. And I'm guessing you want me to tell you why.
Yeah, I do. Good, you know this.
Yeah. I think for me, just the framework, at least for me with my faith, it's the, like, I'm a person that is like incredibly anxious. And I think, you knowing me over the years and knowing me more in depth over this past, probably
2 years or so.
2 years now.
Yeah.
Like, do I seem like an anxious person to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I've been trying to live in and while in one way I know it's true in my head, I want it to be true in my heart as well. As like there's actually a verse in the Bible in Matthew 6 where it talks about like even the birds don't worry, like even the birds just chill because they know that they're gonna have food and stuff like that. And I think I live in a very I think because of my upbringing, which we could probably talk about later.
Yeah.
Like I always have these moments of like fear of whether or not like my life is good, basically.
Yeah.
And I think I use that example of, I think like if you really look at like even the animals that are outside, like they don't freaking care. Like they're not like stressed out or anxious. They're just like, I'm just chilling, looking for my next meal, and like life is pretty good. Like birds just fly in the air, and here and there they'll fly down, boom, pick up, I don't know, a worm or something, and like fly back up, right? So I think that's had a profound impact like on my life. Secondly, I think like meeting my wife, and I know this is like a really cliche thing to say, but I think who you marry or who you partner with for the rest of your life is such a huge indicator of like where you will or will not be in life.
Oh, yeah.
In the next 10, 20, 30 or forever rest of your life. I think it's incredibly underrated. I think it's probably the most important decision that we make in our lives, probably more than any other decision that we make.
Right.
And I think that in today's day and age, it's really easy to, it seems like such a thing that people don't focus on anymore. Like I think nowadays people are so focused on career and focusing on like, figuring out like exactly what you're supposed to do vocationally and all this stuff. And it's like, I'm very fortunate where like I've known my wife since I was 12. We started dating at 17, and then we got married at 24.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
And then we've been married for 11 years now.
Dang.
So, yeah.
It was like it was almost meant to be.
It feels like it, yeah. There's moments where it feels like it's not meant to be.
I think every relationship feels like that here and there.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's going back to the anxiety and how you deal with that. So, what's a tool that you use today? Like, let's say you were really anxious, like right now, this second. What's something that you would do or say to yourself? Like if you had to coach yourself through it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So to give you context, as much as I am an anxious person, I don't really get panic attacks, or I don't really get like moments of like questioning my life and freaking out. You know, people get like these like breathing panic attacks.
Yeah.
I think for me, what anxiety looks like more so is over time, I start to get into like a slump. Like, so what happens is like for me, anxiety tends to be like numbing. Anxiety tends to be like when I feel stress or I feel anxious about my future or a current situation that I'm in. What I tend to do is I will sedate, right? So my natural state will be like sedating and like I don't know, like I'll lounge around more.
Okay.
Or I'll binge eat as a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah,
So these are like
okay.
unhealthy ways to cope.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to
Yeah,
that.
right. So like I'll binge eat or I'll look for a way. Like anytime like I have like back issues with my back. Historically, I'm actually 1 year back spasm free. So I'm
Awesome. Congratulations.
Huge. Thank you. It's a very big deal for me. But you know, historically, what I do is like my wife knows if I have a back spasm, she'll be like, "Oh, dude, you're about to order Taco Bell, aren't you?" You know, and it's like the worst, absolutely possible worst thing you can do to yourself when you have a back spasm. But like I have these like ingrained patterns over time of like a decade of having back. It's like that's my version of like doing drugs, basically.
Yeah.
It's like my version of like doing opiates, right? And nowadays I don't have those same cups of stress, but when I do have similar stress, I think for me coping mechanisms look just more like taking action.
Got it.
So it's like instead of me letting myself get stuck in anxiety, I'll take action because I feel like action beats anxiety every single time.
Yeah.
Like I just need to get momentum forward. I need to push forward, and then the anxiety starts to fade away because I'm like in control of my fate.
Yeah.
You know,
100%. And that's something that I've learned recently too, is that whenever I get anxious, I agree with you 100%, is that I'll start working on taking action on something. But before I take action on that, I get very specific on the reason why I'm having the anxiety in the first place. And then I try and isolate that reason. And then I try and get into solution mode of like, how can I solve this problem? Like, what is the specific problem that's giving me anxiety? And I'm going to work on that problem specifically. Yeah,
that's good. And I think a lot of times we look for like we have to plan. We don't necessarily have to plan out 10 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, I don't like on the other side of, because you might do A, B, C, and that doesn't equal anxiety free on the other side.
Right.
But maybe just taking step A or B in the right direction is enough to propel you to get into motion to figure out what maybe C, D, E, F would look like.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of times we forget. So for me, it's like just making sure that I work out.
Yeah.
That's really key. Like I know, and it sounds like kind of weird to say that, but I'm sure you relate. It's like, for me, once I start moving, once I start sweating, at least in those 20, 30, 1 hour, 60 minutes, I don't think about anything else.
Yeah.
Right? For me, something recently that I've been doing a little bit more on and off is jujitsu. Jujitsu kind of gives me that similar feeling I had in early CrossFit that I don't get it's like harder to obtain now.
Okay.
Like that.
And what is that feeling?
Like, do you still get that workout high every time you work out?
Like define workout high.
So like the first time I ever did like Barbara, was that the 10, 20?
Yeah, it was like
10, 20,
like
30,
20
40.
pull-ups, 30 push-ups.
Yeah, 20, 30, 40, 50,
like,
right?
something like that.
Three rounds, rest.
Yeah, rest like 2 minutes.
Yeah, rest
3
2
minutes
minutes
or something.
And then you 5 rounds, right?
Yeah, 5 rounds.
So the first time I ever did that, I felt almost like this, like, it was like the first time I ever did an ice bath. Like I felt this like extreme mental clarity after. Obviously I felt terrible, but I felt like extreme mental clarity afterwards. I felt like really almost like high. I had like a serotonin and opiate hit.
Yeah.
And it's harder for me to train or move like with that same level of intensity or effort to feel that exact same. It's like every high is a little bit lower now. I still obtain some of it, but it's not the same. I haven't felt like that early 2009 to 2012 high that I used to get a lot more.
Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that you just own a gym and you've been around it for so long, like day in and day out? Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, this is very normal to me.
Right.
Whereas like sometimes I'll watch new people that come through our gym and I see them like all jacked up after a workout. I'm almost kind of jealous. Cause I'm like, dang, it's crazy because I could go at it the same effort that like what perceivably as hard as that guy went after it. And it's like the result wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's because I've dosed that discomfort so much that I'm a little bit used to it. Whereas for me, and this isn't like I think jiu-jitsu is the answer or anything like that because I don't do it regularly enough.
Yeah.
But the sessions when I do go get a one-on-one or something like that, it's so uncomfortable because I'm so bad at it.
Yeah.
That like the entire time you're in fight or flight, and you're also doing math. You're like, oh, dude, if I do this, he's going to do this. Or if I do this, or he does this, I have to do this to counter it. And it's like this, it's a physical chess game, and you're exhausted. It's like, it's cardio the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's cardio, and it's isometric tension.
Yeah.
The entire time you're just gripping, and like you're tight this whole time.
Yeah.
You're never loose. And I think afterwards, like an hour, you're like, dude, I can't believe I did this for an hour, and I feel like a little bit of this high. But the biggest thing is that I really didn't have space. Like now when I'm at Metcon, sometimes I don't go hard enough where I can't think about something else.
Yeah.
Like I can train and still think about everything I have to do that day. Right. Whereas when you're doing jiu-jitsu, if you're doing that, there's no way you're having a good session.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you don't have time to think about it in jiu-jitsu.
Exactly.
I'm assuming. I mean, I haven't done jiu-jitsu myself, but from what you described and from my friends who do it as well, they say the exact same thing. It's like a chess match, but it's also physical.
Yeah.
So along with that, I mean, do you think that that's like your new CrossFit now? And do you think that has anything to do with just the fact that gets you outside like the four walls that you work in, that you've been used to doing the whole time, and gets you also into an environment to where you're being coached?
Absolutely, because I'll tell you today, I just did a class at your gym, and I felt that high.
Yeah, because it was just different.
Yeah,
right?
right. Because it wasn't in my own gym.
Right.
It wasn't in like my own space with my pull-up bars and my dumb. It's like the same stuff, but it's like changing that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And right away, like I sent it today. Like
I know you did. You worked hard.
Yeah, I worked really hard. I still feel it in my biceps and my lats a little bit, and I feel really, really good. Not that I don't feel that at my gym. It's that, but it's like I'm so used to that environment.
Yeah, and that's also your work environment too, which is a lot different because you also have to be on in a different way in your business environment.
100%.
Good. That actually moves us perfectly into our second segment here, which we're going to talk about balancing business, family, and our fitness as well. So, when you're trying to balance those three, what seems to be the one that seems to fall to the wayside the most?
Oof. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but for me, between like fitness, business, and family, I would say that at least for the last 7 years, maybe, ever since my back injury, I think I kind of used it as this excuse to be like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to be that fit anyway. Like I can't compete at the highest level of the sport anymore. So like, you know what? Maintenance is good enough. And I think that's actually a space that I've been living in for, some time now, where I know that I'm probably fitter than the average individual, but then I know that like with what I'm accustomed to, I'm not even close. And I think there's a frustration point of like, well, what would it take to be closer to the other side of that spectrum versus where I'm at now? And then there's days where I'm also like, well, I'm still good enough. And I think that's a tension that I actively live in right now, right? It's like, what is good enough? What is my minimum standard?
And what is that standard now?
I'm trying to figure that out, honestly.
Okay.
So it's like I'm actively in the mode of like trying to figure out what that means for me. I know that before they changed it, I wanted to qualify for a quarterfinal in 2025, but now I think I'll make it like top 25%. So I'm still aiming for a 2025. Oh, I just banged the table. I'm still aiming for a 2025, but I mean, we'll see what happens this year. But like, again, at the same time, I use that as like a third party external validation, but I actually don't care about doing well in the open. You know what I mean? So I think it's like earlier I was like, oh, maybe I'm just going to like spend 2024, like just getting jacked out of my mind, you know? But then even with that, it's like, and then what?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's always the tough part of like if I know that for me, if it's not rooted deep enough in some kind of why, I'm probably not going to pursue it to the best of my ability. Like I work really, really hard in business or like on the gym right now, and I'm starting to have other things that I'm working on outside of the gym. But for 10 years, I've worked really, really hard in the gym for two reasons. Number one, I knew that I really, really wanted to serve people, and I took the mission of my job very, very seriously. Right, like I could be doing an office job. I could have a traditional 9 to 5. I could be in like consulting or like jobs that maybe like I might do well in, but may not enjoy the lifestyle as much.
Yeah.
But I know the mission of what I'm doing in business, I love deeply.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And I've loved it for a long time. And the second thing is like I'm driven by the why is like I have a family.
Yeah.
Like I want to take care of my family, not only my family, but my non-blood related family. Like I consider members of like my staff family, and I want to see them do well. You know, and on top of that, as an extension of my staff, I want to see I want to see every member of my community do really, really well in their life too. And I want fitness to be the catalyst for that. You know, like I want to see them all crush whatever outside goals that they have outside of the gym. Right. And I want to see the gym as this place where you come in, and because you crush it in here, we give you the confidence to go out and crush it as a doctor, or go out and crush it in your consulting job, or as a small business owner, right? Like whatever that is. Or maybe you crush it in a sport outside of our gym, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us get into fitness either for aesthetics or for performance or just for overall health. But I think oftentimes that once we start seeing some results, an unexpected pleasant outcome of that is confidence. And that's something that really helped me a lot, because before I even started working out, I was not a confident person at all. I was very introverted. I didn't believe in myself, a lot of things. But then once I started working out, you know, not just CrossFit, but it amplified more when I did CrossFit. And I saw that, you know, my body was changing, and not only that, I got the mental health benefits of exercise. I started getting more confident, being more aggressive with things that I actually wanted, and being less afraid of that.
Yeah, I think there's like a two-part threat to being really, really fit, right? The first one is like, you know, the work that you're capable of doing. So it's kind of like like one of the benefits of if you're ready and in that state of life where it benefits you. Like, let's say you're being really, really wealthy, right? If you check your bank account and you know you got like 10 million there, you know, from a validation standpoint, like, I'm not gonna. It's the opposite of like Maslow's hierarchy needs.
Yeah.
You know, from a security standpoint, I'm Gucci. I'll probably never be homeless unless I develop some kind of like extreme habit, or addiction, right? So you know, like it's that same validation with the same, like with your fitness. That analogy that I'm trying to draw is, you know that what you have stored in the bank because of the work that you've done.
Right.
Right. And then on the other side of it, I think just from an aesthetic standpoint, like, you know that, like, you know, we're in our I'm in my late 30s now.
Wow.
But, I know. Welcome. Welcome. You'll get there someday. But as I start to approach like 40, you know, I'm starting to see like more and more of my friends. Like I had a high school friend reach out to Luke yesterday. He walked in the gym, a guy that I remember from like two decades ago. And he goes like, "Oh, does Eric still own this gym?" And I actually still remember his name.
Really?
Crazily enough.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's like a year older than me, like a class older than me. And I graduated in a 1,000-person class. But long story short is like, he comes in and he's like, "Yeah, basically I'm a dad now." And I'm like grossly out of shape. And it's like, I can only imagine like where his confidence is and how he must feel internally about himself, because he knows that he hasn't taken really great care of himself. But it's like I think for me, having like a really fit body is like having like mills in the bank.
Yeah.
Because it's literally like, you look in the mirror, you're like can't touch this. You know, like not like in an arrogant way, but it's like you just feel really, really good. I heard someone say like there are less people that have six packs than people that have $1 million in the bank.
Yeah.
That's wild if you think about it.
That is
from
wild.
a rarity standpoint, because if you look at the World Wealth,
like WHO or
World? No, that's health.
Yeah.
No, World Health. Well, it's a World Wealth. It's like a wealth distribution.
Okay.
Right? I think like 50% of people in the entire world have a net worth of under $10,000. Under $10,000. 50% of the world.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's like the next tier up. And then 1 million plus, like if you have $1 million net worth plus, it's 0.9%.
Wow.
Of the entire world.
That's crazy.
And that's crazy because even within people that have $1 million net worth, the gap between millionaires and like decamillionaires, like real millionaires, right?
Yeah.
And nowadays, if you live in California and you have a house, like you're pretty much a millionaire.
Yeah.
Right? So between that and like decamillionaires and then billionaires or 100 millionaires and billionaires, it's an insane gap.
That is an insane gap.
And they're saying that there are less people that have six packs than those people.
Yeah.
Right? And not to say six packs like a measure of like how fit you are, but it's like that just goes to show like the rarity of how it is. And I think that's why society idolizes the idea of having a six pack so much. Because we know how hard it is to obtain one.
It's hard, and there's nothing you can do other than work for it.
Exactly.
Like that, you can't buy it. You can't inherit it. You can't, and no one can take it away from you. Which is it's an asset that no one can steal, or you can't lose in a divorce. You can't. Yeah. No one can steal it. Yep. Like it's 100% earned.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So Wolfpack. So make sure you guys go get six packs to match your $1 million bank account.
Nailed it. Let's move on to focus and discipline. So we're going to kind of shift into here in some business stuff. I would love love to chat about, because we're both gym owners. You've owned your gym for 10 years. I've owned mine going on now 11. And we started roughly around the same time. And I think you and I both have learned the hard way of focus and discipline.
Absolutely.
And this is something that I get asked a lot about. Either, it's usually one of these three things. It's either discipline, motivation, or focus. So what was like the biggest lesson that you learned going through the 10 years of your gym where like, is there anything that stands out on focus and discipline specifically that you had like a tough lesson that you had to learn?
Focus and discipline. Man, it's hard to capture 10 years into like one memory or one specific event.
Yeah. It's very difficult.
I think from a focus standpoint, I think there's just focus and attention standpoint, at least for me, and I want to hear yours too, but there's so many things fighting for your attention when you're a small business owner.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Especially when you're still, when you're in the mode of, I am the primary servicer of the product.
Yeah.
Right. So I think on one end, it's like, I want to do right by all my clients, because I want to make sure that what they get from me or anybody else is really, really consistent. That's really, really good. And I know that no matter who the face is on that side of it, that product is really, really good. I think one of the biggest steps, one of the biggest things that is hard to do is going from being the person that's doing everything to being the person that's doing some of those things, and then slowly shifting some of my attention to other things. And a lot of it, and it's tough, because I think for like me and you, we didn't get into this like to get rich.
No.
Right? Like I got into this because I just love doing this.
Yeah.
And I just want to make enough to like I say this, and it's like I'm embarrassed to share this, but I've said this out loud so many times now, like to friends and family, but I've never like said this publicly. But like one of my biggest fears growing up, and there's a deep story behind this, but was that like I would go to a restaurant, and for some reason this restaurant was Applebee's. You remember Applebee's? I think they're like bankrupt now. But you know what Applebee's is?
Oh yeah.
It's like a Chili's type place.
Yeah. Is it better than Chili's?
I mean, I haven't eaten there in over a decade.
Okay.
But in college, Applebee's was kind of this like post Friday. It's like a Friday night hangout where you go and like they have happy hour and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And most of us are like starting to get most of us are trying to get our 21. Like most of us are turning 21, so we can start drinking publicly, right? So I used to go to Applebee's, and I remember I had this fear, because I was still dating my wife at the time, and I had this fear of like, man, would I ever be able to order off of like the regular menu and not just the happy hour menu?
Yeah.
And it's really embarrassing and corny to share that, but like one of my biggest fears was this idea of, could I take my family here someday and not have to tell my kids like, hey, we only order off this section. Like I want them to be able to like go to the Applebee's and just order anything they wanted on the menu.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was like, for me, that would have been success.
Yeah.
Like that would have been good enough.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, like I was like, man, that's kind of like a corny goal, but because of the way that I was raised.
Yeah. 100%.
You know, it's like it was such a big goal in my mind. And when I see myself trying to ascend or do different things in my business, I often feel like there's this idea, or from people that are in our community over a long time that knew me from the past, that they would put you in a light of like, oh, this guy's like selling out in some way.
Yeah.
Or he just cares about money now, where really it's like, I'm trying to ascend in my roles so that I can do better for everybody.
Yeah, to build a platform also for your coaches. Yeah. Because, I mean, that's kind of one of my goals right now too, is because my team's not as big as yours in terms of the gym, but you know, I've been very lucky that I've been able to do this full time, you know, for 11 years. And I've seen a lot of great coaches come and go because, you know, they just couldn't make a decent living. So they went on to be firemen. They went on to do medical stuff, police officer, whatever. And so I'm like, man, we are losing so many good coaches to other industries because they can't make a decent living. Yeah. And so that's what kind of like my next step, I think, and my mission is for my gym, is to build a platform for the next generation of coaches.
Yeah, I feel that. Same.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it requires tons of focus. Tons of focus and a clear path in that direction, where we're going to do it this way because we want to make our industry better. Yeah. And I think one thing that definitely helps with either discipline or focus is when you gain clarity on what you really need or want. Mm-hmm. And then once you kind of dive into it
and having that be your only thing until you get it. And I wasn't really tested like that until COVID, when I had to move into my gym parking lot with my family of 4, and we lived in an RV.
Yeah.
And we knew that, and basically what happened in a nutshell was that the car repair place next door to us offered my landlord $50,000 to take over my lease when my lease was up, because they knew my lease was up. And this was during COVID as well, so they just took full advantage of that, and that really got me fired up. And it was like, I'm like, I have 2 choices. I can either close and just move on to something else, because we had no idea what the end date was going to be, because they kept pushing it back. Remember that? That was annoying. And then, or it was like, I hunt for a building, which nobody wants me because I'm a gym. And my real estate broker probably talked to at least 30 locations, 20 or 30. I can't remember. I can't remember the top off of my head, but most of them said no, specifically because I was a gym. And they're like, you're a gym, even though your financials are pretty good, like, it's just not, you're like, we don't want to take that risk. And we're just like, man. And then finally we found a spot, which is our current location, but it was so expensive. And I'm like, I have a choice. I can either keep the gym going or I take this spot and then I figure it out. So I decided to sign the lease, and I decided to figure it out. And that was some tough times, but I only had one singular focus, and I didn't have an option. And we actually ended up moving out of my old gym with 10 days left. I actually had to get an extension for 1 extra month, so I could, because we hadn't signed a lease anywhere. That's crazy. So 10 days before I was supposed to be completely out of there, I moved the gym in 1 day, the entire gym in 1 or 2 days. And I was really lucky because the members rallied behind. We told them what was going on. And some of them actually got frustrated because they're like, well, what's going on? And I'm like, well, I haven't signed a lease yet. I'll tell you when I know for sure, but I'm not going to give you guys information that ends up falling through, because, until the lease is signed, until the money's exchanged, until I get all the permits, until I get the keys, nothing can happen. And that was a time where I've never been so focused and disciplined in my life, because that was the only thing that mattered, was to save my business, keep it going, make it survive. And then I had clarity, because I had to just do one step at a time to get there. And so I learned a lot from that. That's a great experience. Story and focus. Man. I didn't have any other option. And so now I've taken that same approach. I try to take that same approach in as much as I can.
Yeah, that's good, man.
That was fun. But I don't want to do that again.
I still remember when we were going through COVID, and you were telling me that you were staying in the RV, and I was like, yo, that's wild, bro.
Dude, if I didn't stay in the RV, like, because we were saving so much money by staying in the RV, we were able to afford the down payment for the new building. Place. Yeah, for the new so it ended up, like, all the decisions I made ended up working out. And but those were very tough decisions to make, especially because, like, I was just kind of a hobby gym owner at the time. And then I was forced to become more of get more financially tuned and be more of a business owner.
Isn't that crazy that, like, it took 8 years? It was like 8 years, 9 years?
Oh, yeah.
Like, 8 years of, like, running it as a hobby.
As a hobby, and just as a coach,
like,
and having
become
fun.
A professional.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't have a choice now. Like, I'm like, it's either I close down and go get a regular job, or I make it more professional and ascend myself as a business owner and make things, more streamlined.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the book, dude. I want to talk about your book.
All right.
So if you don't know, Eric written a book, and I have read it. I have 2 copies, actually.
Oh, here we go.
It's called Don't Run from the Fight. It's the freedom framework for men's power and purpose.
Yeah.
So, Eric, what inspired you to write your book in the first place?
Yeah. I'm naturally, like, a writer, so I do a lot of journaling and a lot of writing. And what happened was I shared. I was going through COVID, and I was sharing some of the stuff I was going through. And at the time, I was processing a lot of, like, my journey up until that point, and a lot of trauma and a lot of different things that I think formed me and got me to where I'm at today. That I was just sharing with someone, and they're like, I feel like your life, or just your the way that you coach people, because I don't just, so the book kind of came out of it birthed from a very natural progression. There was never this, like, I'm writing a book. It was more like, someone's like, hey, I think you have a really interesting story. I was like, actually, I used a lot of these stories to teach a framework, right? So what happened was I took that, and then I made it into, I made it more official in my coaching platform. I started teaching men, like, different frameworks to kind of help them get their lives in the right direction.
Right.
And fitness being kind of the catalyst to help them steer in the right direction, and a lot of it would just kind of be trying these different steps to get them going and process and helping them process some of their stories of the past and getting them to go where they want to go in the future. So along with that came a lot of healing in my own family, a lot of my like interpersonal relationships and familial relationships, I think have strengthened a lot since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, the book really was, honestly, like, first and foremost, it was probably for me. It was probably for the 25-year-old version of me.
Yeah.
And the problem that I feel like I really solved by writing that was a problem that I realized a lot of people have, and it's that, like, a lot of men, especially, like, in today's day and age, I think just have no direction on what to do. Like, we have no clue what to do with our lives, right? And I think looking back on it, I think I had probably had a little bit more direction than the average person did, because at least I had a business, and I was married, and I was like, I want to go in this direction. But in many ways, I was still very, very lost. I was doing things because they were like things that I felt like I was supposed to do, right? Versus the things that I want to do,
right?
You know, and yeah, that's kind of really how the writing process started, But to this day, like people ask, you know, like, am I going to write a second book? Maybe and probably, but I think it's weird. Like, I don't even really identify as an author. Like, it just feels like it's something that I did. And I don't write to try to sell a bunch of books. Like, it just, yeah.
So when you say that you felt like that you were doing things because you thought you were supposed to do it rather than what you wanted to do, can you go into more detail about that?
Yeah, you know, I think I grew up in a very I was born in Whittier, California, so it's like 30 minutes north of here.
Yeah.
And a child of two immigrants. My parents are first generation Taiwanese. They both came in their 20s, and a lot of their story is that typical immigrant family story where we're here to survive. First of all, we're here to, like, kind of plant some tent poles and figure out, like, can we stay?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, can we hang here? You know.
Yeah.
They're post, like, gold rush generation, right? So they're post gold rush. They're post, like, you know, there's starting to be a lot of immigrant communities flocking here into Southern California, and, you know, I think for them it was just everything was survival. The job that they get, the businesses that they start, they're just a means to trying to make as much money as you can. And really live out, like, that American dream, the typical American dream of, you know, getting a house, having 2 cars and 2 kids type of thing, you know. And I think they accomplished that. But in accomplishing that, I don't know that my parents ever lived a life that was like the one that they wanted. You know, they did things because they had to.
Right.
They did things because they felt like that's what you're supposed to do. And I think, even now, like, as I look at my parents, which, like, I'm really, really grateful for them for what they were able to do, so that, like, my brother and I could have the lives that we have today. Like, I think it was built on their backs.
100%.
It was built on their backs, and I'm super, super grateful for that. I also look at, like, the level of, like, emotional development or intelligence that I have that maybe they're still kind of growing in their 60s, and I'm in my 30s, and I have clarity over things because I had the space to work these things through.
Yeah.
I had the space to take care of my health. Or maybe from watching them, I had a fear of, like, dude, you know, like, maybe trying to make a ton of money or doing all these things isn't like maybe my health isn't worth sacrificing for that, because I see what that looks like on the other side. And the funniest thing is, you talk to anybody as they get older, what is, like, the first thing they tell you that you should do? Is they usually tell you should take care of your health.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I don't think it's by any accident that I ended up being in the industry that I am, with the mindset that I have, doing the things that I want to do to help people. Like, even my book and what I'm doing with coaching people, it ultimately is to help people become happier, healthier people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just focusing on men because, like, I am a male and I have gone through these things, but I think there's a whole generation of people that are now confused about what is really most important, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a great story. And I know a lot about the story. So if you guys haven't picked up the book yet, I'll put in the show notes. But I want to ask you also about the framework that you work. So you mentioned earlier about the framework. Will you walk us through the framework a little bit?
So I think the big thing is that a lot of people have this idea of what life should be like. You know, you go through life and you have these stories that you've accumulated over years. You know, you have like I believe that, for example, people that are in their people that are like, let's say our age, they're 30 years old, that have poverty mindset. They didn't just develop poverty mindset like yesterday.
Yeah.
It was something that was ingrained from you from when you were probably cognizant of being alive. So like somewhere between 5 to 8, these memories of like value systems started to develop. And I'm just picking on poverty mindset because I think it's an easy one that a lot of people can identify with.
Yeah.
Right. But for example, like for me, one of my earliest memories is always shopping the shopping the sale section.
Yeah.
So as a teenager, I remember my parents got a divorce, and my brother and I we are going to the grocery store, and my brother's like throwing food in the grocery cart, and I look at him like I'm offended at what he's doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I want these Cheez-Its, and I'm like, I look at him and I'm like, well, I just looked at the price, dude. They're not on sale. You can't get them. Like I'm his older brother telling him he can't get groceries.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me like you're not the boss of me, you know? But in my mind, because I was raised under the guise of we only buy this like the on sale items at a grocery store. So and I'm literally I can't get over the fact that he's willing to make my mom pay full price for like a snack. Right? And I realize now, like as an adult, like years later, where a lot of these ideas of how I see the value of something, or how I see what I should or should not pay for something, or what something is worth, is predicated on all of these stories that I've told myself over years and years of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. Like we tell ourselves stories all the time, and those stories aren't true.
Yeah. Exactly. So the first step is like being able to recall your stories.
Yeah.
And like looking at your life through the lens of like, what are some of the stories that I've told myself up until this point in time, right? The second step is to really take a look at them and being like, are they true? Are they true, and do they serve me well? Mm-hmm. Right. And then I take the reader through section by section of like, okay, like if they're true, what does that mean? If they're not true, what does that mean? And then what's the next step is like, how do we tell ourselves a new story? How do we change our stories, and how do we tell ourselves new stories? Yeah. So as I take them through like step-by-step action plan of, so good example of that is like, if you don't want to have poverty mindset, for example, like what are you going to do to change that? What is going to change your mind, and what are you going to do? How are you going to practice, what practices are you going to put in place so that you can start growing an abundance mindset? Yes. So it's like, what things do I need to stop doing? What things do I need to start doing so that I can develop becoming this person, right? It's the same thing as like if you're trying to become a healthy person. Being healthy is an identity, right? What we don't realize is that if you want to be healthy, you can make that choice like that. Yes. Hey, you know what? I want to be healthy today. Boom. You know what? What did I not do yesterday? Well, yesterday, I worked from 7 to 7. I got off. I walked in my house. My kids came up to me. I was stressed out, so I yelled at them. We got through dinner. We bathed them. I'm making this up right now. Yeah. We bathed them, and then I put them to bed. And then after that, I talked to my wife about how my day kind of went, and then we both watched Netflix until we fall asleep. What's one thing that we can do that's going to be different today than we did yesterday? Maybe I can start off by, first of all, waking up a little bit earlier and doing something a little bit different. Maybe I'll go for a walk. Yeah. Maybe I'm going to go walk for 10 minutes before I just go to work today. Before I take that morning shower, I'm just going to go for a quick walk, right? And then let's call that Tuesday. So I did the walk on Tuesday. Maybe on Wednesday, I'm gonna do the walk again. I'm gonna stack that walk, and then when I get home from work, because I'm kind of feeling a little better because I started my day a little bit differently, I'm not gonna be a dick to my kids, right? When they were, because they're probably really happy to see me. Yes. They didn't see me all day, and so instead, I'm gonna have a positive interaction with them now, right? I feel good about that. They feel good about that, and then you know what? When I wake up on Thursday, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go for the walk. I'm gonna get home. I'm gonna greet my kids, and then before bed, I'm gonna do 30 push-ups. Right now I'm starting like this person, Joe Schmo, is already healthier than they were on Sunday. Yeah. Right. Because
with making some very small changes,
very, very small changes. And the next thing you know, a year later, you have a completely different identity.
Yeah. I think people grossly underestimate the power of compounding.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Any other thoughts you want to share on your friend? I have no follow-up questions to that.
I didn't see us going down that route, but
no, that was awesome.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I don't talk about any one specific like realm in the book, but
Okay.
really it's to help people get in the like started in the right direction, and a lot of it's asking ourselves questions,
Yeah.
which I think most of us are kind of afraid to do because it's easier to live in the status quo of what is.
It really is. It's really easy to get stuck in that fixed mindset of I see this all the time when I talk to, like, when I do consults with people, and they have such a fixed mindset to the point where they say, well, I'm not like that.
Yeah.
They already have a self-limiting belief. And it's like, there was a time also when I didn't work out. Yeah. There was a time where all I did was play video games, where I got bad grades and had no direction in life. And then I did make that change in one day.
Yeah.
I had a meeting with someone, and then they said they really gave it to me straight. And instead of taking that criticism and trying to get a cuddle and a Band-Aid for it, I did something about it. And then ever since that day, I've been completely different. So sometimes it just takes also someone telling you how it is.
Yeah, I'll kind of add to that to kind of wrap up that question about the book, but I don't necessarily share this in the book, but I believe that we are one relationship away from completely changing your life.
Oh yeah.
So what I mean by that is, if we let ourselves live in the day-to-day mundane of what life is, you're going to get the same result over and over. If we do things like, I think Albert Einstein has a quote, like, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
Along those lines, I think if we continue, not to say that we should change our friends constantly, but if you want to change, you also need to change. So for example, if you want to be healthier, like, I have this thing, I talk about this in, I think, chapter 13 or 14 in the book, where I talk about, like, your personal board of advisors. So I have a personal board of directors for my finances. And these are not people that I pay. Yeah. They are good friends in my life that are way better with money than I am. Mm-hmm. Right. Then I have people in my life. So like I would say that Sean is kind of like he's my tinker coach. I've hired him. Yeah. So that is a financial decision that I've made to put the right person around me to help me navigate so he's in charge of literally. His role is, am I tinkering in the right thing? So I have a specific person that I've hired in my life to help me figure out whether this is worthy of my time, energy, and effort, right? Outside of my gym, because I know the cost of taking my attention away from things that I've already invested in.
Yes, and Sean has definitely saved you from making some interesting decisions.
Absolutely, right? So there's that, right? Then I have people that are like on my spiritual board. Then I have like people that I talked about my marriage and family, right? Because I have a friend that I'm on his board actually for his business, because I'm better at business than he is. But he's on my board for like family and relationships. So I call him all the time. He's got 4 kids, and we're in different time zones around the world now. But like, I really respect. Like, I think he's a really great father, right? So I think the example that I'm trying to set with the story is, we're one change away, we're one relationship or network away from being around the right people.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, if you want to get healthier, well, and like, if you look at like your 5 closest friends, and all of those people are pretty lazy and they smoke and they drink, you're probably number 6. You're probably gonna smoke and drink.
Yes. And
if you're not that person and you still hang out with them, I would be hard pressed to believe that a year from now you're not doing some of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because of who you're around.
Yes.
Right. I don't have, like, none of my closest friends are in any sort of debt. When I mean debt, I mean like consumer debt. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because I don't spend like that. In fact, like, if you kind of get close to my circle and I find out you have consumer debt, I start like getting on your ass. Like, can I say ass? I start getting on you, because like, I don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
Like, and then what I do is I try to help you get out of it, even though that's not like my specialty or anything like that. Like, because I know if you're going to be close to me, that's something I want to be around. Right. And it's the same thing that goes for anything. It's like, if you want to elevate like your wealth, you like, sad to say, but like, you got to be around wealthier people, and it's not that you should like not have any friends that are like not as wealthy, but you have to be around people that have the thing that you want, because that's the quickest way to get to where you want to go.
No, absolutely. That's definitely an underrated thing that people don't think about, especially when it doesn't matter what you're starting. Yeah. If you want to improve on something, that your environment matters so much more than people think. It's one thing to want something. It's one thing to have a game plan. Yeah. It's one thing to have all the details and clarity and the roadmap ready. Yeah. But if you're not around the right people, it's not going to be nearly as effective.
100%. You were asking me what my biggest takeaway, hanging out with Jason Kalipa was.
Yeah.
And this is like a guy that's been in the CrossFit game since 2008. He's owned a gym since 2008. He's been in CrossFit since like 2006 or 7. So he's really, really tenured in the sport and the gym side, right? Probably 18, 20 years at this point. And, you know, I got to spend Friday with him and I watched him. And I think the proximity to just watching him in his element was so powerful for me because like the way that he shows up elevated the way that I want to show up.
Yeah. Yeah,
So just like,
you have something, you have a framework now or an example to go off of.
And it wasn't even like I want to be exactly like him or I want to do as he does.
Yeah.
But there's elements of like the way that he shows up. I see how powerful it is and how much of a value add he is in the spaces that he's chosen to be in. So like even the way that he introduces himself, even the way that he says, I was like, I could tell that he's on.
Yeah.
And he wasn't faking it. It was like it came from a place of he shows up to his own like businesses, right? And he's like, how do I serve? And the way that he says what's up to people, and the way he daps people up, the way he looks at details, the way that, you know, we had conversations where he's like, yeah, like I never give I never give negative criticism to any of my staff when I'm just stopping by the gym. He goes, it's not the time for that. I only tell them what they're doing right.
That's such a great little nugget right there.
Dude, I walked away from that and I was like, I evaluated like 3 conversations I had in the previous week where I didn't mean to, right? But it goes back to the whole thing of how do we show up as leaders in our spaces, like even be in class working out and like not turn it off.
Yes.
You know, and it's like I thought about a conversation. I was like, oh man, like I owe Kara an apology. You know, like we were talking about client success with a client in front of her, and I could tell she was doing personal training, but she was in her mind, she was messing up somewhere because I was talking about it in front of her.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, like I really wish I didn't do that because my only job, if anything, that should be done in private. What should be done in public is just praise.
Yes.
And I just took that small little thing from watching someone that does it really, really well, and he's done it for longer. And that totally changes the structure of like how you lead and how people follow.
Yeah.
You know, and it changes the ecosystem of the people that are in your community too.
Dude, 100%.
Yeah.
That's such a great place to wrap things up. Any final thoughts, Eric?
That's all.
Dude, that was such a great way to end it. That was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure having you.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me.
We'll definitely have to have you on again because this is a lot of fun. Thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, please leave us a 5-star review so we know to make more content just like this. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Red Wolf CrossFit, and please DM us your questions there or any content suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, good luck. Have fun. Nailed it.
Have fun.